Welcome to the Obesity Medicine Podcast with your host, Dr. Matea Rentia, board certified in internal medicine and obesity medicine. Here, we talk about a path to metabolic health, and we have real conversations about chronic weight management and living a full life. Just a reminder, I am a physician, but I'm not your physician. So everything that's on this podcast is for informational purposes, but please go talk to your doctor about what's right for you. There is no medical advice being given on this podcast. Today, I'm going to really quickly talk about a question that I got asked, which is so good. Are we more insulin resistant in the morning? And then if we are, what we can do about it? And I'm going to answer this because it's super counterintuitive. You would assume if you are not looking at the physiology that maybe you do better with carbohydrates in the morning, that the sugars, and then it gets worse and worse throughout the day. But for a lot of people, it's opposite. I'm going to explain the physiology super quickly, 1 minute or less. I always joke, it's not true. I can't do it in 1 minute. And then I'm going to give you 2 tips. They are super easy, super practical. You could do them today that you can start to get yourself on a better track if this is happening for you. So first of all, what naturally occurs in our body as humans, we operate on a circadian rhythm. In the morning, naturally, about 3 to 8 a.m., somewhere in there, we have a rise in hormones like growth hormone, cortisol, things like that. When that goes up, that says, hey, liver, release sugar. The sugar is released and you wake up, right? So it's your wake up alarm within your body. That is normal. That is natural. Now, the morning blood sugar should not be going over 100. Once it's over 100, that's impaired fasting glucose. So let's say that your doctor has said you're insulin resistant, you're pre-diabetes, you have diabetes, things like that. If that's the case for you, then there's something abnormal happening in the morning for you. And let's explain what it is. So that circadian rhythm is happening. Cortisol goes up, growth hormone goes up, things like that. Liver releases blood sugar. If you have insulin resistance, you can't handle that blood sugar as easily. You can't get it into the cell, so it stays in the bloodstream longer. And that's an easy way to think about it, is natural things are occurring, but you can't respond to them appropriately. When that happens, then long-term, you end up having health problems. The good news is we can actually do a lot about this. And so now that you know, all right, in the morning, I already have it stacked against me based on how the hormones are working out. And especially, by the way, if you are post-menopausal. So if you're not on hormone replacement therapy, your estrogen levels are down. That makes insulin resistance worse. Your cortisol regulation can be different. And so now it's even worse. So you already had insulin resistance. Now we throw the lower hormone levels from being in menopause. Now it's like multiple insults that are leading it to be harder and harder for your health to work out in a positive direction. If you have either a finger stick glucose or you used a CGM or you have fasting blood sugar and you see that it's 100 or more, or frankly, really even 90 or more, these 2 tips can help. And even if you don't have insulin resistance, all right, 2 things we're going to do. Number 1, in the morning, we're going to focus on a little bit of a lower carbohydrate meal and more protein and fiber forward. Reason being, we're not already in an environment where your blood sugar is up potentially, giving yourself even more that you have to deal with. The protein and fiber that you're having, it's going to not spike your blood sugar even more in the morning. So that's helpful. Now notice, I said in the morning. I didn't say all day long, low carb, never having carbs. That did not exit my mouth. It's just in the morning. We want to be mindful of that. I'm going to tell a quick patient story here. I'll never forget. I had a patient in the past. This person was incredibly healthy with what they were eating, how they were exercising. They actually did not have overweight or obesity. They had an elevated blood sugar at one point. Their hemoglobin A1C was pre-diabetic. And they were like, oh my gosh, how can this be? I'm so healthy. I'm doing all the things that are recommended. And I said to them, what are you eating for breakfast? And it turned out that they were having only carbohydrate. There was no fiber, no protein. And so I said, listen, the only change I want you to make for the next 3 months, because hemoglobin A1C is a 3-month marker, I said, just make your breakfast more primarily protein. I think we talked about eggs, and I forget what else, but just going more to not being just like a baked good or oatmeal, although it does have some fiber in it. Again, some people just can't handle it as much. So I said, hey, let's go over more to protein forward. They came back 3 months later, blood sugar normal. That's a very small change, right? Okay, so focusing on your mornings and go slowly in that direction. You don't have to suddenly overhaul everything. Remember, when you hear information like what I'm saying, you get yourself there progressively. Maybe you start to add in a tablespoon or 2 of Greek yogurt before you have that other carbohydrate heavy breakfast, and you start to take yourself in a direction where it makes sense for you. And over time, you end up having a higher protein breakfast. All right. By the way, as far as protein goals with the meal, if we can get 15 grams, amazing. I would love ideally for you to get 30 grams of protein per meal, but if we can get to 15, it's a start. The second thing you're going to do is in the morning, if you can do just a little bit of movement, anything like 10, 15 minutes, even if it's a light walk, what you're going to be doing there is you're going to be bringing down the blood sugar irrespective of what's happening with insulin. Now, not everybody has the time in the morning, but I want you to start to ask yourself, if this really mattered to me, could I get up a few minutes earlier? Maybe you don't go to a gym and you're not making this all hard and complicated. Maybe you just walk back and forth in the kitchen. But can you start to look at in the morning, might this really help me? Years ago, when I started to work on all this, I did a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. For 2 weeks, I saw based on what I was eating and how I was moving, what was my blood sugar doing in the morning, before meals, after meals, all of it. And it was shocking to me. I have a history with prediabetes that I had even before losing a lot of weight. I had reversed with nutrition and movement alone. What is shocking to me, though, to this day, because I have that history, the morning sugars are a problem for me. But because in the morning I am eating in a way that supports my body and I'm walking an hour in the morning, I'm doing a lot of things, not only in the morning, throughout the day to support myself. I don't have evidence on the labs of there now being a problem. But again, if you really look at the trends, you can see, oh, like that's there, but I'm doing things to help myself. I say these 2 tips because it's really empowering to know it doesn't matter if you've been dealt the hand of insulin resistance, that you got that genetic gift from your family, fine, but let's do things that can help you. Remember, your roadmap, what works for you is always going to be different than other people's. The best thing I heard the other day, your goal, your target. So don't worry about what other people are doing. They might be able to eat and move entirely differently than you, and it works out for them. But for you, the timing of when you do these things really matter. I hope that this was helpful to you today. If you liked this, I have the podcast, The Obesity Guy with Matea Rentia, MD. I talk about a lot of amazing stuff on there. If you go to rentiaclinic.com/podcast roadmap, there's a free podcast roadmap that I have where it breaks down all the different categories of topics that I've mentioned on the podcast. For example, let's say you want to know about one of the newer medications that are out. It'll say medication and I'll have hyperlinked to each of the episodes where I talk about it. I've got hundreds of episodes at this point. I know that you're not going to want to go dig back through all the old stuff, but if you want to know exactly what you want to find, you can get that free podcast roadmap. All right, we'll talk soon. Before I end today's episode, I have a quick message if there are any clinicians in the room that are either starting a practice or that are growing a practice. This is not relevant to you if you are not a clinician in that capacity. So the episode ends here if that's you. So if you are either starting or growing a practice, it does not matter if you are brick and mortar or if you are telehealth. This really works for either. Me and Amanda Sabaker next week, August 18th to 20th, we are hosting a 3-day boot camp, and it's the Fill Your Clinic boot camp. This is the playbook that we see after years and years of having worked with female clinicians and helping them to grow their amazing practices so that patients know they exist in the world and that they can help really who needs that help. We are going to show you all the different ways that we see people be able to actually effectively get this done. You will have the playbook, and after those days, you can go forward and just execute on it. So we don't want to keep this information from anyone. We're going to put it all out there. If you can't make the call times on those 3 days, do not worry. Replays will go up. If you have questions, always feel free to message me, but I'll have the link down below for the Fill Your Clinic bootcamp. And if you go to amandasabaker.com/fill your clinic, you can get more information for it. All right. Hope to see you there. We'll talk soon.